Hey guys, it's Ben from One Cast Fishing. It's finally fall. That means from now until mid-December is probably going to be some of the best bass fishing of the year. So stay tuned. Today we're going to talk about fall bass fishing and the 4 lures you need to be successful when you go out on the water this time of year. Let's do it. Hey, so officially fall arrived, what was it, about 3 weeks ago? Here in the South though, in North Carolina, 10 days ago it was 97 degrees. So we're just now starting to get those cooler temperatures. I know it's fall when I have to wake up in the morning and put a hoodie on or put a jacket to go outside. The bass have a couple different cues to let them know that fall's coming. They need to start eating to get ready for the winter. So obviously the first is going to be the lower water temperatures, the decrease in water temperatures. Now that's a result of cooler air temperatures, but it's also a result of less sunlight. The nights are longer, and the bass recognize this too. And then for those in the South, or for those of us that have lakes that stratify with a thermocline, that's disappeared. That means the bass are no longer constrained to that certain depth zone to where they've been all summer. So it's these keys that the bass recognize, their instincts picked in, and they got to start feeding up for the long winter ahead. Hey guys, I'm going to be honest with you. Bass behavior may seem a little bit erratic this time of year, especially the early fall. That's because the thermoclines disappeared. They may have pulled off a little bit deeper. But the keys we just talked about, the lack of a thermocline, the decrease in water temperature, the decrease in sunlight throughout the day, that cues the bass's instinct that they've got to start chasing baitfish to get ready for the winter. Now, baitfish also move shallow in the fall, and I don't know the science why, and if you do, make sure you hit the comment down below and let me know, why do the baitfish move shallow in the fall? The fact is they just do. So the bass are going to chase it. Now, that's not going to happen overnight, right? The bass today may be sitting in 15 feet of water, right? 3 or 4 days ago, they may have only moved 100, 200 yards and sit in 12 feet of water. And that's going to continue throughout the fall until they're in the very backs of the creeks and the pockets. That's why folks say this time of year you got to break down your fishing into thirds. So you have the main lake and then you have your creek arm. Break that creek down into thirds. That first third is going to be what's closest to the main lake. Then the second third is the center, the middle section, and then the last third is the very back, those pockets and the backs of the creeks where the water runs in. I'm sitting in probably a second third of a creek that only runs 200 to 300 yards, and you can probably see back there the backs of this creek. So you got to break it down. Early fall, you're fishing the first third. As the water temperatures decrease, you migrate to the second third, and then say by late November, early December, you can start concentrating on the backs, that last third, until the bass begin to pull out onto the wintertime haunts. Hey, so we just finished talking about the bass migration a little bit, where to target, some areas to target fish in the fall, and how they move. But now let's talk about the 4 baits I'm going to have tied on my deck, no matter what, in the fall to help me catch fish. So let's start talking about them. So the first bait I'm going to have tied on, no matter what in the fall, is going to be a crankbait. A crankbait is perfect for covering water, and it's a great search bait, no matter if you're fishing shallow or deep. This time of year, it's still early fall, the temperature's in the mid-70s, and the bass are still relatively deep, about 12 feet. So I've got a 5XD. That's what I'm throwing right now. As the fall progresses, I'm going to downsize from this to a 3XD, a DT6, and eventually, say mid-November, late November and early December, I'm going to have this square bill tied on. I'm going to be cranking this thing in the backs of the pockets, the backs of creeks, hitting every little stump out there under the water. And again, that's the key. As the fall progresses and the water temperature drops, you just downsize the bait, or you just decrease the bill on that so you can shallower diver crankbait is what I'm trying to say, right? The key is no matter what depth you're fishing or which crankbait you're fishing, I find the best results when I fish that thing extremely fast. You cast that thing out there. Most people reel it down fast to get to depth, but you keep that speed up. Keep cranking that thing as fast as you can. Right? You got to crash it off every single piece of timber down there. Dig it into the rocks. Rip it through grass. And I'll pick it up here. What you're looking for is this thing is swimming along. It hits a lay down. Boom. Pops up. or hits a rock, deflects to the side. That erratic action right there, if the bass is following or bass is set up there, that's going to cause that reaction strike, and that's going to give you the hookup. The faster you reel that thing, the greater deflection you're going to have, and that's how you're going to catch fish. So again, crankbaits are one of my favorite ways to catch it this time of year. It's a great option, great to cover water, so make sure you have one tied on. All right, so the second bait I always have tied on in the fall is going to be a jig. Now that is our specialty here at One Cast Fishing, so a little bit of shameless plug, but we all know the jig is a big bass bait. The big girls have to come and up and eat this time of year. Might as well throw a bait out there that's going to catch the big ones, especially if you're in a tournament and you need that kicker fish. On deck here, I just happen to have our Arky head, half balance. This is the classic craw color. It's green pumpkin, a little bit of amber in there. Hopefully you guys can see. I have it paired with a biospawn. What does this say? A vile bug. But great combination for the fall. That was an Arky head. That's great when the bass are maybe 4 or 5 feet off the bottom and you want to stroke it up. But what I really prefer to do when the bass are oriented on the bottom and they're around rock and hard bottoms is to throw that football jig. Remember, the bass are going to be keyed in on those areas because it allows them to pin that bait fish up against the rock so they can't escape. So because the football jig comes great through that cover and those hard bottoms excellent, that's why I prefer the football jig. So you've got to have a jig tied on. The jig works extremely well. I'll probably do a video here in a couple weeks about how I downsize, trim skirts up, go a little more finesse as the water temperatures get cooler and we transition close into winter. The thing I want to mention about though is, at least this time of year, right, the water temperatures are still relatively warm. Low 70s, even maybe mid 60s. You need something that has a lot of kick on your trailer. So this is a rage bug here. The appendages, right, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 if you count the little ones, and they're really thin. So what that means when you move this jig along the bottom, it really kicks and flares. So the bass are going to come over to investigate it, and when you pop that and flare that skirt, they're just going to reach down and bite it. It's just that simple. Now, as the water temperatures cool, the cold-blooded animals, their metabolism slow down. They're not quite as active. So we're talking high 50s. That's when I'm going to switch to something with a little less action. Sweet beaver does well by reaction innovations. Again, this has 4 appendages instead of the 6, but they're thicker. So that means they're less pliable. They don't move around as much in the water. A little more stable down there. So again, I'm going to be throwing this when the water temperatures gets down in the low 60s, high 50s. And then eventually by winter, when the water temperatures in the low 50s, high 40s, be throwing a pork chunk or something that doesn't really move at all. But no matter what, in the fall, you've got to have a jig tied on. It's a big bass bait. If you want to catch big bass, throw the jig. Hey, so the third bait I want to talk about, and this is really 2 baits. I'm lumping them together, so you're really getting 5 today. This is a twofer right here. That's going to be the spinnerbait, and I've got one right here. KBD, willow leaf blades, and it's going to be your vibrating jig, your bladed jig, your chatterbait, whatever you want to call it. And I've got 2 of ours here. This is our Brim Magic color with a Houdini little dipper on there, Reaction Innovations. It's a 3/8 ounce, and then I also have a 1/2 ounce, and I love this color when they're chasing shad. Carolina blue shad, little dipper, blue pearl Reaction Innovations. This is a great shad imitator. And that's the reason why I like spinnerbaits and bladed jigs. They do a great job of imitating fleeing baitfish. That's because of the vibration they give off that attracts the bass lateral lines. The flash they give with their blades, especially if you got the silver blades, is going to attract those fish to come in and get them. Right? I prefer a bladed jig. I just seem to catch bigger fish on them. However, at this lake, there's a lot of grass here, and this grass is going to stay until probably December. It actually really doesn't ever really fully die off. You still get clumps of it. Because of that, I often opt for a spinnerbait in this lake just because it doesn't get hung up as much. One thing I will say about spinnerbaits is in the fall you gotta fish willow leaf blades. I'm a big proponent of Colorado blades the rest of the year, pre-spawn, fishing out deep, 3/4 ounce, 1 ounce spinnerbaits, etc. But in the fall, you gotta downsize, the bait's smaller, you gotta fish faster. Willow leaf blades allow you to do that. They get off a lot of flash, and these willow leaf blades and the trailer on there just makes it look like a little group of fleeing shad or bluegill, and the bass are going to key on that and grab it. So they're great this time of year. You can fish them fast, you can cover a lot of water, and just like a crankbait, you've got to reel them up against cover, bang them across cover. Whenever they deflect, you'll get that reaction strike, and that's what you're looking for. So again, another great lure this time of year to always have tied on your boat is a spinnerbait or a bladed jig. Just choose the one you're more comfortable with, and then choose the one that the conditions are better for in your lake. Hey guys, so the last bait I want to talk about for fall bass fishing is going to be your topwater. No surprise, right? This time of year, if the bass are chasing, you throw a topwater out, they have no problem hitting that thing. They'll come from 30 feet deep and hit them. I really learned this lesson 2 years ago at a tournament at Lake McIntosh here in North Carolina. I was throwing this bait right here, this KVD Splash, and it's really beat up. It's missing a couple hooks on the treble hook here. I keep it because it's special. I could not get the fish to hit a jig or a crankbait, but I threw this KVD Splash all day. Had 10 bites all day, so not a lot. 2 of them were blow-ups. 1 was a knot, wasn't a keeper. 2 I culled out eventually, but the 5 I brought to weigh-in weighed 21.83 pounds. Best 5-pound limit I've ever brought in the tournament. So, we all know topwater is great in the fall, but it can be excellent in the fall and help you put a lot of big fish in the boat. There's nothing like a 6-pounder hitting your KVD Splash right at the boat out of 20 feet of water. But I'll be honest, sometimes the fish don't want a popper, and I tend to fish the poppers on steep banks with laydowns or overhang cover. I'll do that pop, pop, pause, pop, pop, pause, pop, 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 pause type of cadence that attracts the bass in. But sometimes the conditions aren't set for that. You don't have those steep banks, you don't have that cover, or the bass are out in open water. That's when I'll offer something different. A great option is a walking style bait. And this is one here, the Zara Spook, the original. You can work this thing real fast, cover a lot of water to find those fish as a search bait, or you can slow it down and get those really wide swings there when you're walking the dog that will get the bass to bite. Other great options are buzz baits, whopper ploppers. Those wines will get those bass to come up and hit it. And then, of course, if you're fishing around vegetation, lily pads, you've still got grass. Like in this lake, the grass would never completely die out. At least there'll still be big clumps of it. A frog works great as well. So topwater, make sure you got one tied on. You can search for them, you can catch big bass, and if you see them busting over there, pick that thing up and launch it out there. You usually pick up a couple or two when they're schooling like that. So topwaters, have them tied on. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I know there are a lot of videos out there about fall fishing, but hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you've seen something, or you've seen the baits that I use to be successful in the fall. It's a great time of year to fish. It's one of the best times of year. A lot of big fish will come up and eat, and you can really load the boat. Again, have a crankbait, have a jig, have a vibrating jig, chatterbait, or a spinnerbait tied on, then have your topwater. If you have those 4, whether you're fishing a boat, from the bank, you're fishing ponds, rivers, you'll be successful. So again, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, make sure you hit the subscribe button wherever it's at. Make sure you comment and like. Check us out at onecastfishing.com. Pick up some jigs or bladed jigs, and see you guys out there in the next video.